Neolithic and transition to agriculture, we're getting to farming. Plants. When humans brought plants under cultivation and animals under domestication, this goes with it. They dramatically altered the natural world and steered human societies in new directions. You controlling your food sources, right? So they had to start staying in one place. And again, this is over a long stretch of time. It's just that we're looking so far back, we tend to talk about it as if it just popped up overnight, which that wasn't the case. Neolithic era, reference this before, just neo means new. So if you remember that movie from a long time ago, blue pill, red pill, right? The character Neo, that going to be the new, I guess, the new man for the Matrix. Early stages of the agricultural society is what we talk about when we're talking about the Neolithic era. Why was this possible? Well, probably because the Earth started to warm. All right, Earth has done a number of things going way, way back, much further than we're getting into. So where it's been really hot, cold, I think hot and then cold again, and then we started warming up in this period. So geologically speaking, these are just little nano sections of the whole geology of the Earth, and so that's what they're talking about here. So we're in roughly starting to warm up. 8,000 BC. General relations in agriculture. Gender, excuse me. So a little speculation here, but they're saying that probably the women started plants. This is the textbook authors are saying this. And probably the men to capture animals and domesticate them. Probably domesticated foxes, by the way, if I remember correctly, the first animal, and then dogs after that, because it sort of worked out better with dogs from wolves. So they're going to go through a bunch of different animals. So they're going through the animals. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it here, but just do note that certain types of animals, it's very difficult to domesticate or impossible. So the ones that we have were more or less the same ones from back then. So I just talked about dogs from wolves. We were able to change them a bit. So we could change their behavior, make them more social for us, not necessarily just for themselves, less aggressive and all of that. But you can't do that with a cheetah. Like, why? It's just cheetahs aren't hardwired to do that. And so in Egypt, they're talking thousands of years, the ancient Egyptians, meaning the elites, the upper classes, they like to use cheetahs to go hunting. And they've tried forever to domesticate cheetahs like we domesticate dogs or something like that. Because how cool would that be if when you go hunting, you just sick your cheetah out on, which is what they were doing to hunt, and you could raise, like your business could be raising cheetahs or something like that. Can't do it. It's just biologically they require hectares, like in a really large amount of area to reproduce. We don't seem to be able to change their behavior, and so in other animals, I was talking about wolves before. When we do make them friendlier, over time their coats change and their snouts change, right? Much like dogs did the same thing back in the day. So it's tied to your behavioral adaptations. Seem tied to things in ways that we I don't know that we still fully understand this. Okay, early spread of agriculture. So we're getting to 6,000. I'm going to go down to the map here in a minute and show you about how it's easy to spread grains. Or easier, or how you would do it anyway, I guess I should say. Over time, agriculture made for the production of food supplies. And so over a long stretch of time here. And I will tell you that generally speaking, this is not too dissimilar to what you see if you go to Lowe's or Walmart and you get you a pack of seeds. Flip over to the back and it's going to tell you about when you should plant the seeds for your temperate zone. And so that's the amount of sun you're getting every day in that time of year, but also the expected temperatures, rainfall, and things such as that. So it's usually easier to start out with the spread to go east and west, right? North and south is a much more difficult sort of thing for most plants, unless you're talking about we're going in up through here with some old spelt into what we're going to call Italy. But for the time anyway, it's not that much of a temperate change. Like the temperatures don't actually change that much in the seasons, or they do, but you can, by the time you get there, you can change the grain itself enough to where it's not that big of a deal. So this is a little different than, let's just take maize, what's going to become corn. We think maize started out as a very, very small, well, they all started out as wild plants, but the flower part of it, what we're going to end up seeing as a big old corn stalk was not a big old corn stalk. They had to change it quite a bit at the time, and then over long stretches of time, you have to get it north after that. To where, like now, if we're in Iowa or Nebraska here, where we grow a lot of corn today, you could not grow the original maize to the degree that they're doing that. I mean, if it grew at all. So it has to, the genes of the plant have to change over the time when you're getting it north and south. And if you, just as a practical matter, by the way, a lot of you have time where you've been to the north, maybe you went to Alaska or your upper Midwest or something like that. Notice how the colors change. They tend to be greener. Well, so especially in July, if you go up there when it's really hot in Texas, and you go up to Canada or Minnesota or something like that, you're going to see a lot greener plants because they're trying to get as much sunlight as possible. Whereas by the time, if you're down in Texas, it's going to be a lighter hue to it because, I mean, the plants would burn up. It's just too hot here in July. The sun is way too strong. So remember when we were talking about how the sun hits the angle of the sunlight. So when you're around the equator, depends on the rotation of the earth and all that, but you're going to tend to see the sun strike directly at times through here. I was on the wrong line. That's what's hotter through here. Okay, early agrarian societies. Well, this is why it's mattering to us as we scale up. So agriculture, so meaning the animal husbandry or raising animals that comes with it, this is what it did. It really raised our populations. So the question I was talking about before, we seem to need to do this to scale up, but was scaling up such a terrific idea to start out with? Right? Well, for whatever reason we did it. It wasn't necessarily a conscious decision all around the world. It seemed to be probably the easiest way to eat is my take on it. And so then people start collecting. And so Jericho, or if this is the same Jericho in the Bible, it's around the same Jericho today. And you know, of course, in the Bible, the story of Joshua, for example, all reference in the same city. All right, so if we go here, they're talking about the trading situation around 7000 BC. And the idea that you have to, even then, they probably had people come try to take their stuff, which is why you would build the walls. And so that idea of the wall that we get from the book of Joshua, it's like, that seems to be what it survived. At least for the importance of it anyway, way back when. Pottery, extremely important back in the day. Because as soon as you start staying in one place, well, now you need to collect. You need to store. Right? You can't just go to the nearest stream or river and get you a drink of water because you may not have the river that close. You need to figure out, like, you have to send somebody down there to get it. You store it back someplace else. Food, all the other stuff. When you start staying in one place, you start collecting stuff, right? And so pottery is extreme, especially for food. Pottery is extremely important. Metalworking starts out with copper, and much later is going to change. And this is going to be not with copper so much, but with bronze. All bronze is you're mixing some other things with copper to make it harder, so that way you can do more stuff with it over time. The tool, you don't need to constantly sharpen it. You can get into harder stones and start working them. take a tree down a lot easier if you need to. You can kill people a lot easier with bronze than you can with copper. Same thing with armor, right? If you want back in the Bronze Age, that just means they're trying to switch to that technology. So the armor starts changing to bronze and so on. So it was before we get to the Iron Age. But one of the curious things that we do know about the Bronze Age is people had different brews of bronze. So in a certain area of North Africa, for instance, in Egypt, somebody decided that this worked a little bit better if you put this combination of stuff in, and that was different than in what we would now call Europe. It was different China, India, and so on. And some of these things made sense, and some of them didn't. They just seemed to have a false correlation. They thought that adding this stuff made it better. And whereas it didn't do anything, but it did give it a signature. And what's weird about that signature is that you can track it to sections of the world that you wouldn't think that there was any way it could show up, and then it does show up there. So some parts of these communities were getting around through, whether that's they themselves were traveling, or just trading it along the way to others. We're going to see down the road in the Silk Road. They went to sort of the edge of their world, traded it. Somebody picked it up, went to the other side of their territory, traded it, and so on. Textile production. This is very, very important. Textiles were really until recent times, one of the most important industries for all of civilization for the largest stretch of time. Because they're so important. Like, well, how are you going to keep warm? Right? What are you going to wear outside? So the fibers is what it comes down to. So different plants and animals over time. Sheep have always been an important thing. Or wool. Recently, and relatively recently, not in terms of our lives, but for stretches of history, cotton's been extremely important. But a lot of things, when we get into some of the ancient worlds, I'm going to talk about some of these fibers and the dyes that would signify royalty. And these are just unbelievable. It's really difficult to understand how important this sort of stuff was in their society. And then even much later on, relative to this period, when we get into Shakespeare's time. Well, Shakespeare was in London, right? And so the same city still there. It's just an earlier version of it. And London had risen to prominence. At that time, it had a lot of money because of wool. That's where they were shipping wool out to the Thames River, and the normal part of or the continental part of Europe, they loved wool from really all over the world, just because English people could raise some pretty good sheep because they had the type of plants that the sheep needed, essentially. All right, and this is so. And was it a good thing to go farming, to scale up into what's eventually going to become cities and then civilizations? Urbanization, people collecting in one place, appears to have resulted in the decline of women's status over time and the creation of the patriarchy, meaning like the important old men that are sort of running things, right? And they're going to speculate on some things here, but I will tell you, like in the short story, in my opinion, right? The word is mine, right? So once soon as you can stay in one place, and then you're going to look around, and then who's going to survive over time? The person who views this as mine, it's all mine, or it should be, and so I'm willing to fight to do it, right? So then the people who they don't necessarily need to cooperate with everybody else if they can control people to sort of expand their fiefdom, even if the fiefdom's like a little farm to start out with. Right? So we're gonna pick this up when we talk about primogeniture, or how everything would go to the first born male heir over time. It's a huge backdrop in society. By the way, not all of the world picked up the patriarchy. In certain sections of the world, women would control who was going to come to the throne next, but then also have a much more expanded say in government and property. So that's all the speculation. Religion starts to, so I was talking about shamans before. So now we're not really to the point of the organized religions like we have today, but we're getting to the point to where the rhythms that governed agricultural society, birth, growth, death, and regenerative life. I also think like marriage. Like, so who do you think is going to control who gets married? Who ultimately decide? What is marriage? Right? Marriage, highly symbolic to start out with. Right? Everybody's got to know that you two young people are together. It's not just that the groom and the bride know this. Everybody's got to know this in these small communities. So all the other guys have got to know it's hands off for her, right? She is taken. She is attached. Same thing with the guy. And then the guy can be reasonably secure, right? Or so have a reasonable expectation that those heirs are going to be his children. He's going to start passing on the wealth in the future through this thing called primogeniture that I was talking about, and so on. But notice that even at marriages today, dress up, sacred words are said, music is played. All of this stuff enhances the everybody knowing. Essentially, it's the symbolic nature of it. And now you are a pair after that. And so all that sounds odd, and people try to buck me on this when I'm in face-to-face classes. Know that just legally speaking, you are a different entity after you get married. Right? So your taxes are going to function differently. Your life insurance, your obligations, what your liabilities are. Your spouse can really just wreak havoc or become a blessing for those types of things. All right. Large cities, and this is what we're really getting into with the Neolithic period. Since some people can concentrate on food, then other people can concentrate on other things. And so we're going to start to call this the specialization. Well, what do we mean by it? Well, anything, right? Someone could start making sandals, right? Somebody else is going to grow chickens or raise chickens, or whatever it is. This becomes their thing. So they can concentrate on that and they can do it better. This is ultimately going to lead to iPhones, right? But so for at this period of time, I want to concentrate on like some of the things the booklet: governors, administrators, military strategy, also people who serve in their version of the military, tax collectors, which function very differently than they do today, and the like. So all the different specializations that come up. Agriculture makes all this possible. So civilization can now advance, and we tend to take that to be a good thing. It's civilization, and we tend to, from the screencast before, remember, we tend to view time today as linear. Like we're on a line and we are going someplace, right? Whereas when we start covering some of the other civilizations, not necessarily. Right? So the ancient Egyptians, for instance, viewed time as circular. Like it all just, the life of the pharaoh started the cycle, and then when the pharaoh died, it's like a big circle ended. Put another pharaoh up, start it all over again. When we get into the Mayans, right? And I think you all are too young now to remember this, but I had previous group of students, some of your older brothers and sisters, freaking out around 2012. It's like, oh my God, something's going to happen, Davis. And I would talk at the time about, well, the Mayans viewed time as circular, right? They were very good at astronomy. And to them, this 2012 period, that was just the end of a big cycle, but they just quit there. Like really, they would just start another big cycle all over again after that, the way they thought of it. But what people were doing was we're applying our concept of linear time on top of their concept of circular time. And they said, well, how can they predict it? Well, you know what the stars are going to do in advance. If you know how they work, you know where they're going to be. And it didn't seem to matter how rationally I could talk about this at the time. The closer we got to 2012, otherwise logical people would say things like, I don't know, Davis. Man, you gotta watch this YouTube thing, man. Something's gonna happen, man, and so on. But it's really just a fundamental misunderstanding of, in this case, time. All right. And I think that will do this screencast.